Finding a homeless couple having sex in the steam room. Do you think I ever stepped foot in that steam room the entire time I was there? Absolutely not. I could not get the memory out of my head. Hey there, Luxies, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm back with another sit down video, and I want to tell you about the nightmare of an experience. Practically the worst living experience I've had in 10 years of renting. I'm making this video for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest reason that I'm making it is so that you stay away from this property. I want this property to be empty so that they can fix what they need to fix, because that's the only language that I believe that the investors, the owner, the management company speaks. Losing money. Now, I understand that my reviews are only going to reach so many people, but because a lot of you do come to me for advice on where to move in Vegas, I thought this would be the perfect experience to help y'all out. Now, you know I love the number 7, so I jotted down 7 things that I wanted to touch on to kind of give you an idea of what my living experience was like and what yours will inevitably be like if you choose to rent here. First of all, before I go into anything, I do want to express my gratitude, not to anybody on site, not even to the property itself, but just to the universe, because the apartment came in a time that I really just needed shelter. It had been the thick of COVID. I was stuck abroad for 8 months. I had lost everything that I owned in a storage theft, and I was starting from scratch, and I just needed somewhere to lay my head down. And so I believe gratitude is the seed for more. And so I just want to express the gratitude. And I'm putting this first to give you perspective, just to put it out there that I do recognize that this was a terrible living experience, but I do appreciate the season of my life that it got me through. The problem lies in the fact that I overstayed that season, and that is when I began to get really uncomfortable, and I knew that I had to get out of there. Now that we got that out of the way, let's discuss the initial red flags that I had. The first thing was that I signed the welcome letter like 3 months before I moved, because the place wasn't exactly ready yet. It was one of those where they were pre-leasing, and I never got my lease. I kept asking for it even well after I moved in, and they never gave me a lease. Meaning that I could have just walked up out of there whenever I wanted, because technically there was nothing to bind me to living there, right? That entire first 14 months that I signed for, or that I committed to, I didn't have a lease. And no one in the office had their admin on point to where they even caught it. That was number one. The second thing was that my neighbors that did have a lease were breaking them. I'll talk about one of the reasons why next. But that alone was just a red flag. Right? Because why is everybody leaving? Not because they bought a house, not because they found something better, but leaving 2-3 months into signing their leases. The third thing was that none of my appliances were working. I had to get my microwave replaced 3 times, my washer and dryer once, my dishwasher once, my oven wasn't working. It was just all of those things in a brand new apartment with brand new appliances and nobody having a way to fix it. Things happen. And I've been renting long enough to know that there is no perfect situation, but those were definite red flags. They were signs of what I was going to discover was just management's lack of concern for the quality of life of the tenants, their inadequacy when it came to issue resolution, and just their lack of awareness of what was going on. Too many times I spoke to people, now whether they were lying or not, that's neither here nor there. But too many times I talked to someone in higher management and they'd be like, oh, I had no idea. And it's like, how? You're only the regional. You're not the freaking VP, for crying out loud. How is it that you're managing, you're over this property and you don't know what's going on in the operations and in the day-to-day lives of the tenants? It just didn't add up, which leads me into the first reason that a lot of people were moving out. A sewer smell. I'm not talking about a mild smell, okay? I'm not talking about when you just walk by an area and you catch a whiff. I'm talking about a concentrated smell that if you stay in it long enough, it starts to give you headaches, and which is what a lot of the tenants were complaining about. My neighbors were like, I'm out of here. This one person was saying she was having like allergic reactions, or she was waking up, her eyes were red, but she was in a higher floor than I was. And usually I always go with the highest floor no matter where I live. I lucked out this time because the particular floor plan that I wanted stopped at the floor that I chose. So everyone above me was complaining about these things. People were talking about their cabinets were falling apart. People were talking about their apartments almost catching fire when they tried to use their oven for the first time. It was just one thing after another. But I'm one of those people that I feel very deeply what people are going through. And so I recognize about myself and I try to stay away from all of the noise. So the first couple of months I made friends, and then very quickly I realized that what we all had in common was just how much we hated this place. So I had to separate myself because it was getting to be too much. I already was traveling for work, and then when I came home, I didn't want to be met with all the drama that was happening. But no matter how I tried to stay away, people would find a way to attach themselves to me. I couldn't even go to the snack room to get something without someone stopping me to tell me that someone got shot last night. And I'm like, please, like, enough. An incident that really sticks out to me is one time when I was traveling and I just got a ring installed because I noticed there was a crazy person a few doors down from me. She had previously accused me of dating her boyfriend, who I knew nothing about, had zero interest in him. He wasn't even my type. But because he was down the hall from me, and they have to walk past my door in order to get to hers. So they were walking past my unit, and he makes a comment, just a side comment, like, oh, I used to have a crush on her. That made her think that I was also interested in him. She approaches me about it. She's following me around the garage. I'm like, girl, calm down. He's not my type. He will never be my type. Good for you if you're happy in your relationship. You shouldn't even be coming at me with this, you know? So that was a very weird situation. She had a bottle of Hennessy in her hand, and she was like trying to feed it to me. And I'm like, if you know me, you know I don't drink. But even if I did, not with this lunatic, right? So I'm just trying to get away from her. Elevator isn't working. That's another thing that happened often. So it's just like you could never really be in a good situation because there was always something falling apart. But so I got away from this girl. So before I made my next trip, I made sure to install a Ring camera just because I didn't trust her. I'm like, she seemed like she's a little bit, you know, she's out of there, and I just wasn't going to risk not knowing what she was up to around my space. And sure enough, like clockwork, she had her friend, her sugar daddy. Don't ask me how I know, but in the process of keeping an eye on my door, I discovered that she was a working girl. That's not new for Vegas. That happens a lot in the high-end properties, typically house a lot of those kind of people who work in that industry. I've talked about this in the previous video. I'll link it up here if you're interested. So I wasn't even taken aback by the fact that she was a prostitute. What got me was her and her sugar daddy threatening me in my camera, calling me all sorts of names. Her and another friend came back the next day calling me names to the point that I had to report it to the office. They told me to file a police report. I had to do that virtually. Like, this is all what is happening just because I'm paying rent to live somewhere. Now, this I don't fault management for, in the sense of if a person passes a credit check, a background check, they have the income to pay for it, and they have good rental history, you can't not lease to them. What I'm saying is that I don't believe they did that due diligence. I know they didn't, because some people just wouldn't have qualified to live there. But even after I notified them, they were supposed to give her a notice. They never did it. Meanwhile, I knew of someone who got evicted for something similar. So it's like you are putting me in a place where I'm voicing my concerns to you and you're just throwing them under the table just to keep your tenants, right? The next thing is alarms, right? When I very first moved there, especially, imagine working from home, right? And the alarms are so loud, okay? If you have an alarm in your house where it goes fire, 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 you know those alarms? But then it's just the beeping all through. And they would never figure out what was wrong. Fire department would show up hours later after we've all been kicked out, and they would never be able to explain it. It would just be, oh, it was a false alarm. Oh, there was someone in the building that shouldn't have been, and so they pulled the alarm. Like, all of these type of things, which leads me into something else, right? Homeless galore, okay? When I tell you this place was infested with homeless people, in my first couple of months being there, one of the leasing agents was going to look at a unit, prepare it to show to someone who was coming to lease, and he found 3 men and 2 dogs just chilling. They didn't pay rent. They were not tenants. They were just homeless people squatting in there because the building was incomplete and the maintenance or whoever was building it thought it was smart to just leave all the doors open for easy access. So people were just like up in there living for free. So just imagine how insulting it is. You're paying rent to live in this place that's supposed to be luxury, right? And you're constantly having to share it with people who don't live there. And forget about the homeless situation, because I recognize after COVID that a lot of people were just one paycheck away from losing a roof over their head, right? So I'm not judging anybody who becomes homeless, and I understand the need for a shelter. What I didn't care for was noticing how high on drugs and just under the influence most of them were, right? So that kind of person is unpredictable. I'm going to check my packages, stopping for some tea, and then a homeless lady's popping up behind me trying to get into the pool. Like, it was just very on edge energy, right? Finding a homeless couple having sex in the steam room. Do you think I ever stepped foot in that steam room the entire time I was there? Absolutely not. I could not get the memory out of my head. Not to mention they don't clean. Oh, that's another thing, right? There was one lady, get that. They're charging us thousands of dollars per month for 300 and some odd units. You do the math on what kind of money they're bringing in, regardless of how much they have to maintain. There was one lady that they hired, and all she did was clean the gym area haphazardly, the common area, like where they would show you if you came to kind of tour the amenities and you were trying to lease the apartment. And that's it. The entire time I was there, never vacuumed the carpets in the hallways, never shampooed the carpets in the hallways. Everything was filthy. So not only am I finding the homeless people here, but I know you're not gonna clean up after them. And you think I'm gonna share the same thing? A lot of people would jump the fence and get in the pool just to cool off. And you think I'm gonna be able to come out there and have a relaxing day? Yeah, no thanks. I know that we all have different levels of personal hygiene, but no, immediately no. Now, out of all the Elysians, I will say it is the most beautiful property. And the amenities are top notch. None of the Elysians have all the amenities that the 2-story gym, the sauna, the steam room, as I already mentioned, the sky deck, which don't even get me started on the fact that we never practically could use it, right? They took the remotes away from the TVs that were up there. They dismantled the poker tables that were up there. And just at random, it would be 15 minutes, an hour to the night before, they would tell you, oh, the sky deck's not available tomorrow at 6 up until the next day. Imagine just living there and not really having the access. So yeah, if you went and did a tour and you thought, oh my God, all these great things that I get to do, especially someone like me who's a content creator, and I'm thinking about all the backdrops that I can use for my filming. But every time I go up there, when I am home, there is someone using it. There's no access for it. Tenants are getting beat up, getting punched in the face because someone chose to rent the place out for a New Year's Eve party, right? And they had their own security, not our security, because we didn't have any. Don't even get me started on that, right? They rent out the place, get their own security, and security gets in an altercation with the resident. Like, these are the things that we were dealing with. And where was the management in all of this? Nowhere to be found, right? So let's talk about the fact that in 2.5 years that I was there were 7 managers. Did you hear what I said? 7 managers in 2.5 years. Insane. Unheard of. I've never experienced it. And I've lived in tons of luxury properties. Regional manager being fired for sleeping with tenants. Maintenance man sleeping with the leasing lady. Another maintenance man having to be moved because he was sleeping with a cleaner in the closet instead of doing his job. Like, that type of stuff. And you wonder, how do I know this, right? Because this is another thing you have to ask yourself. Things are gonna happen and scandalous things are gonna occur. But why is the resident exposed to it? Because it became so commonplace that certain people knew and then they would tell me. There's no reason why that stuff should get around, but it's because the staff themselves were not professional, right? At some point, one of the managers was renting the place out, like several units out for Airbnb. We can't do that, right? We would get evicted for something like that and still have to probably pay out the lease. But here you are renting out the place, exposing the tenants to people who you haven't background checked, people who we don't know, so you can get paid on top of the free rent you're already getting as a manager and the paycheck that you get to be here. That was 2021. I think it was 2021 or 2020, like late 2021, early 2022. The current manager now, she does the same thing. Yes, Gabby, I'm talking to you. And I wouldn't even have to call it out if she handled her business outside of that, right? If you're getting your money, but then like everything else is good on site, fantastic. But out of probably 20 emails I sent her while I was living there, maybe 2 or 3 got answered, if that, and it would take weeks for her to do it. It would take for me to have to go up there, and then you show up and she's all, oh, hi, with her fake corporate smile. right? You'll have no idea how many times when I was leaving, they asked me for my new address and still managed not to send my deposit to me. They sent my deposit to my unit at Elysian. Now, if I didn't have address forwarding, I would have never received it. So this is why in some of the reviews, people are saying they never received it, because I don't know if it's intentional or just a blooper on their end, but they're sending it to your old address. And if you don't have, again, forwarding set up, sucks for you. Oh, let me show y'all the audacity. Again, I traveled a lot. My apartment didn't even look lived in. Generally speaking, I'm one of those people that likes to leave the place in really good condition, right? And I'm gonna put a video so I'm not just talking out of my butt, so you guys can see what the unit looked like when I exited, right? I filled in every single hole, even if it was a tiny nail. I filled in every hole. I repainted. I got cleaners to professionally come clean the place, even though it wasn't that dirty to begin with, because I cleaned my apartment every week. And out of $250, wouldn't you believe that they sent me 20 bucks. 20 bucks they sent me. Now, what they spent $230 on, we don't know. I've emailed Gabby, and per usual, she didn't respond. I plan on sending another follow-up email because it's not even the money right now, it's the principle. It's that you guys gave such a terrible living experience, and then you couldn't even do your due diligence. And I know a lot of people talk about how management companies in general are notorious for not wanting to return deposits. I know people say that. But I feel like some people also are guilty of like leaving holes on the wall, trashing the place. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes it is that they did everything and they have this situation. And it never happened to me up until now. So I didn't have any point of reference for that, right? Up until now, I've lived in very luxury properties and left it in good condition and got all my money back. But I'm not highlighting that because it was my first. I'm highlighting it to show you guys the type of management that there is there. There is zero accountability, zero competence, zero awareness, zero customer service. The whole thing is just ghetto. Literally, if I can describe it as anything, it is a ghetto, fake luxury, lipstick on a pig property. It just is what it is. And I recognize in general now that we're getting to the point that luxury really doesn't mean anything. A lot of people just slap luxury in front of the apartment name. But this experience tainted my perception of all Elysian properties. I will never live at another Elysian. I don't care who's managing it. I don't care who owns it. They've just ruined the experience for me. Again, so bad so that I just made it a point that I was gonna get out, even before I'd found what I wanted, right? There's a specific apartment that I'm waiting on now, and once it's ready, I'll be moving there next year. I love where I currently live now. I made the best decision ever. I mean, staff is impeccable. The grounds are kept beautifully. I have a lot more space. My technology package here is robust in comparison to where I came from. They're not trying to nickel and dime you. They're not always trying to look for a way to upcharge and upsell you on something. It's just nice overall. Like being here, I've already had a few things that needed to be addressed and they've been taken care of like this. I've never been able to say that about the Elysian. And so I'm saying all this to say, take my advice, live a better life, okay? If you can avoid it, just don't sign a lease, okay? Just don't live there. If you like the property so much, drive by every day and admire it, but stay away from the Elysian, okay? If you didn't quite catch it, I'm gonna say it again. Terrible management, rent does not equal your living experience. Homeless galore everywhere, in the stairwell, in your hallways, by your amenities. Management will promise things that they're not going to do. They were promising for 3 years while I was there and nothing changed. It only got worse. The caliber of people that live there, outside of the fact that you absolutely have to work close to the strip, there's nothing that this has going for it. And there are many condos that you can get into, even rent, if you have to live in that area, that you won't have to deal with that because a lot of them are protected by the HOA. Does that make sense? So it's just not worth it. If it was cheap, okay, then you know you get what you paid for, right? But living there isn't exactly inexpensive. And then having to still deal with weak management, lack of safety, a sewer smell that would literally drive you insane. Not worth it. And if you don't believe me and you want to find out for yourself, that's okay. Just make sure that they show you your actual unit that you're going to move into. That's what's going to determine how you really feel. At least 50%. If you're one of those that enjoys amenities, again, I don't know what to tell you, because a lot of times you're not going to be getting what you paid for. So if you're just looking for a roof over your head, it might work. And that's why it worked for me for a little while, because I wasn't even really home to care. But once I started deciding I wanted to settle in, I almost went for a 2-bedroom on site. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because it was always something new coming up, you know? And it was just too ghetto, okay? It was a very ghetto experience. -5 out of 10, do not recommend. I have opinions about a lot of properties that I tour. This will probably be the only one that I tell you just not to bother with. I don't recommend it for anyone, anybody. Just leave it. There are options out there. This is not the best you can do, I promise you. So for those of you who saw my apartment tour and then you're asking about, you know, the prices or where the area or what it's called, now you know it is called the Elysian at Hughes Center. And it is a disaster of a building. You heard it here first. If you have any experience with the Elysian, comment below. If you have any other questions for me, comment those below. If you have topic suggestions that you want me to talk about in the next video, comment those below as well. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.